Hello, Panther fans, and welcome to a very special edition of the Four Man Rush. I'm your main man, once again, Kevin Avery, aka 4MR underscore Country Kev. Bringing back a very popular special guest with us here from the Athletic. We have one of our dear friends of the Four Man Rush, and to a lot of you guys, Joe Person. Joe has been on here multiple times before. As you guys probably, as we noticed, you guys quote and tweet a lot of his articles that he puts out. So definitely had wanted to invite Joe back to talk about these Panthers all season, such as the free agency, the draft, post-draft, and heading up into training camp. So we're going to jump right into it. But first, let Joe introduce himself and tell you about a deal that he's got going on. What's up, Joe?
My man, first of all, I got to tell your listeners what a pro you are, Kevin. Like, we've been trying to set this interview up, and I was moving my daughter out of her dorm yesterday. And so kind of last minute, I'm like, hey, are you available? And you kind of drop everything you're doing and set this up. So thank you for accommodating my schedule. It's good to be on. And yeah, the Athletic, which you're always good to promote, and I know you retweet a lot of my stuff. We have a $2 subscription special. Now, it's for new subscribers, unfortunately. But if you're not a subscriber, I go to my Twitter. I have all bunch of links pretty much every day or most days to my stories. And if you go through one of my links, it'll take you up as a new subscriber to $2 a month, which is a pretty good deal. Like that's everything. That's not just Panthers. That's everything we cover, from soccer in Europe to the NBA playoffs. I grew up in Pennsylvania. I like to follow the Philadelphia Phillies. We have an excellent Phillies writer that I read. You know, it's kind of how I start my day. Wordle and reading about this guy's Phillies coverage.
All right, great. And Joe, before we jump into these Panther questions, for our fans, this first time seeing you, can you give a quick background on how you got into being in the position where you're at now, kind of like the path you had to take?
Yeah, it's a long story. So the abridged version is I wasn't very good at math or science. I was pretty good at writing. I was a marginal athlete, played college football at William & Mary with Mike Tomlin. Yeah, Mike Tomlin was much better than I was. But it just sort of was like a natural marriage to kind of pair the writing with the sports. And that's, man, I almost hate to tell you how long ago that was. That was, brother, that was like 30 years ago, man. So I've been around.
All right. Well, I appreciate that version. Like I said, you definitely are well respected. Anytime there's a presser, you know, you have a distinct voice that sticks out. And I'm like, yeah, Joe just asked that question. So we definitely appreciate it. All right. So, all right. So now let's hop on to these Carolina Panthers. As you know, since we last spoke, so much has changed with us. You know, Frank Wright filled out his staff. Him and my personal favorite, Samir Suleiman, I call him the capologist. You know, they got to work, created all kind of cap space that we could not see anywhere, because for the longest we kept seeing we was over the cap by like $8-10 million, and somehow we ended up having the second or third most when it's all said and done. So Joe, give me your assessment of, you know, the from what you had experienced, the coaching staff and the free agency moves so far.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. I mean, this offseason was kicked off by the coaching search. And even beginning with that, it was a very thorough process. When they interviewed Matt Rule, when they hired Matt Rule, they only interviewed 4 candidates: Stefanski, Mike McCarthy, Eric Bieniemy, and Matt Rule. And only one of them got a second interview, and it wasn't even Rule. It was Mike McCarthy. This time, they doubled the field. First of all, they doubled the number of people on the search committees. Your guy, Samir, was on there. And 9 candidates interviewed, up-and-comers like Ejiro Evero, Thomas Brown. Well, I don't know if Thomas interviewed, but he's here now. And then, of course, like former head coaches like Sean Payton, Frank Reich, Jim Caldwell, they ran the gamut. It was a thorough search. When they hired Reich, the same process took place with the assistant coaches. And David Tepper basically gave Frank Reich a blank check. And they went out and got a couple former head coaches, including one Panther fans know very well, Dom Capers. I mentioned Jim Caldwell. They went out and got Josh McCown, who looks like he's going to be a head coach someday. Evero, I should say. Thomas Brown. I mean, I've never seen people on Twitter were like so geeked up. I've never seen people so excited about assistant coaching hires, but I got it. Like, I get why. And that momentum just sort of rolled right into free agency.
All right. And when free agency kicked in, with the Panthers, a lot of fans were like, okay, we definitely got some holes. Where do we feel? Particularly, with the new change, switching from a 4-3 to a 3-4. What type of player is going to fit? So me personally, when we started signing the defensive linemen, it's like Williams and Tuttle, I was like, okay, yeah, and I could definitely see the fit. Derek Brown being pushed out to a 3-4 DN, but from what we understand, Joe, from Evero, this is not going to be the old school 2-gap 3-4 defense. I heard him say multiple times it's going to be more the 1-gap style 3-4 defense. With the additions that we've made through free agency, do you feel like the Panthers, as the roster currently stands, have filled up enough to make this transition a successful one, or do you feel like there's still one or two pieces missing?
Well, the most interesting thing to me during free agency was how they were already building up that offense to have it ready, almost sort of tailor-made, turnkey for who turned out to be Bryce Young. And that meant Miles Sanders at running back, Hayden Hurst at tight end, obviously DJ Chark and Adam Thielen at wide receiver. They got the deal done with Bradley Bozeman so that the whole offensive line will return intact. I mean, that was done. All of that was very much on purpose. You and I've talked about before how Scott Fitter addressed the offensive line, especially last offseason. Mm-hmm. And the whole idea was when they finally made the move to draft and develop a guy rather than the quarterback carousel, which would have been fine with that too, in terms of having an offensive line in place. I was ready for them to draft and develop a guy, I should say.
Right.
This offseason, as I just said, it was more about some of the skill positions. Some of it was by necessity, obviously, because they included DJ Moore in the trade with Chicago. I still don't think they have anyone on the roster wide receiver-wise at DJ Moore's level. I think the signings they've made and drafting Mingo, all nice pieces. I think the group collectively is better than the group of wideouts last year, but I don't think they have anyone quite at DJ Moore's level.
Right. And we definitely saw the reports that where the Panthers were trying to get the deal done without giving up DJ Moore. It was kind of like, listen, if you don't include DJ Moore, the deal's not going to get done. So I guess the Panthers had to reluctantly do it. I believe DJ Moore said he was actually in the process of moving to his new place when he found out. So it was just kind of like a huge shock and, a wow factor. Me personally, I don't think we gave up. I think we gave up significant, but I don't think we overpaid based on previous deals to move up to number one. Pick swap this year, a first next year, a second in 2025. We gave up our Christian McCaffrey second round from the 49ers this year. Got $20 million off the books. I mean, Joe, I really think that this was a fair deal for all things considered, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I do. And it was basically the same deal they were going to use to go up to 2, because, as you know, the Bears were trying to flip with Houston, go back to 2, and then go from 2 to 9 with the Panthers. And the Panthers really, as I understand it, didn't have to give up much more or any more than they would have to get to 2. So I'm with you. I mean, when you make that jump from 9 to 1, I mean, it's going to be significant, but I didn't think it was just a fleecing, if you will. Right. And I selfishly, as a writer who covers this team, I was ready for a new narrative. I'd done the 3 years in a row of the quarterback shuffle. I think it's going to be cool. And whether it was Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, whomever, Anthony Richardson, I just thought having a drafted quarterback, the number 1 overall pick especially, was just going to be fun. Is a boost of energy through the whole organization and the fan base. And it's been, the last 2 months since March 10th, when that deal went down, it's been a lot of, it's just been, it's been fun, for lack of a better word. Covering all, I flew out to Kansas City last week, the day before the draft, and interviewed all these guys. And that was back here for the draft in Charlotte. But it's been a whirlwind, but a good whirlwind.
Oh, yeah. And that kind of leads up into the second part here when you mentioning the draft. And, obviously it was a lot of debate amongst Panthers Twitter and social media who the Panthers going to draft. A lot of people made a deal of the pro day at Ohio State, how they was he and hawing, and it was kind of heard that quarterback coach McCown told Stroud, hey, something about play basketball. We could play basketball in Charlotte or something like that. I know I'm probably paraphrasing here, but definitely when the film was caught on, I mean, for us here at the 4-Man Rush, it was clear cut. Bryce Young, it's not that C.J. Stroud is not going to be a very good quarterback. It was just that I'm sorry, C.J. Stroud wasn't, but it was just that Bryce Young was just better. And it was just, when you looked at third down, when you looked at clutch gene, when you looked at red zone, I mean, he clearly did better. And this past year, he did it with one of the more lesser talented skill position groups at Alabama as well. Like, his running back, Jahmyr Gibbs, was his leading receiver with 44 receptions. And none of his wide receivers cracked the top 75 in Division I. So that was definitely impressive. For you guys, though, the draft really picked up with the second round pick because it was rumored we may move back. What are your impressions of day 2 with Jonathan Mingo and DJ Johnson?
So I actually had mocked both of those guys to the Panthers. I had mocked both of them a little later. I had Mingo in the 3rd, and I had DJ Johnson in the 5th. I didn't mind Mingo at all at 39. I think that was a smart pick. You just look at the track record of Ole Miss wide receivers drafted in the 2nd round. Yes. By the way, A.J. Brown and D.K. Metcalf, and that's a high bar to set for Jonathan Mingo, but he does have that size and that skill set that both those guys have. He didn't have quite the college production that they did, but I'm okay with that. I like that pick. DJ Johnson, I liked him before the draft. I liked him on the 3rd day. I didn't like him at the end of the 2nd day, and trading up and giving up a 4th round pick to get him. That was the one reach, I thought, for Scott Fitterer during the weekend. He said, look, they saw a little run going on at the edge rusher position. They felt like they had to get an edge rusher because it's the one of the positions they did not address during free agency. And now Brian Burns is recovering from ankle surgery. So it just felt like you don't want to have to reach or be forced into picking a position of need. And I think they did that there. Mm-hmm. And we'll see. I mean, he's got DJ Johnson has an amazing set of tools in his toolbox. But Kevin, he's 24 years old. He played 6 seasons of college football, at 1 at Miami, 5 at Oregon, and he's still considered raw. That to me does not sound, like very promising, but we'll see.
Yeah. And Joe, I don't know if you have time because you always so busy to watch his podcast, but I know yesterday I was watching Steve Smith's Cut to It podcast, and he had uh, PNP on there, and he actually went in, and I love this about Steve Smith. His detail is tremendous when it comes to evaluating players. He actually was breaking down both Jonathan Mingo and DJ Johnson, and if you get a chance, check it out yourself. Definitely do it, because it definitely gave me more hope that the DJ Johnson pick is going to be just fine.
Okay.
Because he put up some information stats that I couldn't find on Twitter or Google or nowhere. He was just tying it all in together. I'm like, dang, okay, appreciate that, Smitty. But yeah, he definitely gave Jonathan Mingo the thumbs up. His draft started shooting up late, but yeah, I'm comfortable with him too. Moving on to day 3, we only had 2 picks. Someone that I had mocked multiple times in my mock drafts was North Carolina State's left guard, Chandler Zavala. And even though I didn't mock the Jamie Robinson of Florida State, man, his presser, like he had me ready to put on some pads after all these years and go out to play. Like, I mean, his energy when y'all was, doing his presser was like contagious. Like you could just see and feel the hunger in his eyes and his, play me anywhere, and telling Evero on the call, hey, I'm coming to be a starter. Like, I just love that about him. What are your opinions on our day 3 picks?
I thought both those guys were interesting. Zavala, like you, he caught my eye during the pre-draft process. The fact that he has a lot of the same traits as Ike Ekwonu, whom he lined up next to for part of a season in 21 before having a back injury. But he is kind of a mauler in the run game, much like Ike. And then I loved his story. We're asking him about having his dad being a celebrity chef. And I know you heard the quotes, but having the 25 pounds of prime rib mailed to him when he was up at a Division II school in West Virginia, initially Fairmont. So I like him. They needed an interior lineman. I mean, Austin Corbett's not going to be ready for the start of the season. Brady Christensen's coming off his own injury. And so I like that pick. And I'm with you on Robinson. I did not know a lot about him. But the more I learned, and really the more I listened to him during that Zoom, just like you did, that was cool. Like here, I did a column earlier this week that was kind of some draft leftovers. I led with the lead piece was something about Tepper and his admission during draft weekend about how he's made mistakes and he's trying to be more thorough. But one of the other things at the bottom of or a little lower in that story, I talked about the edge that Robinson is going to play with and has played with. Frank Reich mentioned that too, that this guy plays with an edge. And it reminds me of another defensive back the Panthers drafted in 2012 in the 5th round with 143rd pick. Jamie Robinson went 145. Josh Norman went 143. Dude showed up with a chip. He bigger. Josh Norman is bigger than Jamie Norman. Jamie Robinson. I'm not saying Jamie Robinson's going to turn into the next Josh Norman, but I do like guys that come in and have something to prove, especially in the secondary where it's so much about confidence.
Yeah, you're definitely right about that. I mean, and I like the fact that when I looked at his draft profile, he's played all over. Like, he's played safety, he's played nickel, he's played cornerback. And we seem like we have a couple of guys in that position. It sounds, similar to Chin. Chin can play safety, big nickel, dime linebacker. I heard Evero say. I just like the fact that since Evero has mentioned that he like to use 6 DBs a lot, and when you go back and watch the secondary for Denver, a lot of those guys were versatile, physical, had a certain size, and I think a lot of the undrafted free agents that we got after the draft, particularly secondary, I think it was like 9 of them were defensive players. Like, I really think that there's going to be some guys on that list that's going to have a good, decent chance to make the team, because it seems to kind of fit what Evero and Cape is trying to mold this defense into be. Anyone on the undrafted free agency list kind of stick out to you?
Someone asked me that yesterday, and the name I came up with was Bumper Pool, because 1, he's got a great football name, and 2, like, I don't know if he's going to turn into anything, and tackle stats can be misleading, but Bumper Pool at Arkansas had 4 consecutive seasons where he either had 90 plus or 100 plus tackles in the Southeastern Conference. And that, you don't just roll out of bed and get 100 tackles in the SEC. Like, you got to be, that shows me he's got a nose for the ball. He is, not a big guy, but I'd be surprised if that guy doesn't make the team, or might be special teams role. But he's a guy they brought in on a top 30 visit, which I think is pretty telling. And if they'd had a 6th or 7th round pick, they might have taken him then, but they were able to get him as an undrafted guy. And there are a bunch of guys like that in there, but but he's the name that, since you asked me for one.
Okay. All right. Now, to get back to our first round pick, what I got up here is this article here that you wrote, which says Bryce Young pushes back versus lazy narrative that Panthers QB is too small. I'm definitely paying attention, but I've been kind of scheming, reading through on my phone, so just kind of see what you wrote. Give me some insight on what inspired you to write this article, because I know it got kind of lost in the mix, because it was right in the middle of the day 2 of the draft. Give us some more insight about this article about with Bryce Young and his father.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and I like that. I like that you've got that pulled up. That's cool. The draft, as you said, there's such a volume of stories and information coming at you for 3 days, and the Panthers only had 5 picks, but still, this was a story I wrote the afternoon after Bryce had been drafted. And somebody at Bryce's press conference, it wasn't me. I wish I'd been smart enough to ask the question. But he said, Bryce, you're always asked about your size and how it hurts you. How does it help you? And Bryce said, man, my dad's going to like that question, because that's what he's been wanting. He's been wanting people to talk about that forever. And so after the press conference, myself and a couple reporters went and talked to Craig Young, who, by the way, is a very thoughtful, it was very nice, first of all, to take time to talk to us. And he said, look, that he's, and Bryce has said this too, he's been this size for a long time. It hasn't really ever, he's won at the highest level. He played at a national powerhouse at Mater Dei in outside of LA. He played at Alabama, obviously, but they transferred him. They enrolled him at Mater Dei very much intentionally, because they were already, like, his sophomore year in high school. I think he went to LA Cathedral. They were already, Craig Young and the family was already hearing this narrative: too small, good player, too small. So they're like, you know what? Let's put him at the best high school. Mater Dei, as you know, Kevin, has sent Matt Leinart, Matt Barkley, a couple other quarterbacks to USC. And let's put him at the best school in LA and one of the best high school football programs in the country. And he just kept rolling. And I just, the whole idea, like, he's got a pretty high arm slot. I'm not worried, honestly, about his height. And you talk to scouts around the league, I don't think that's anybody's concern, a little bit. But the bigger concern is his width, his size, weight wise. And I mean, he had to, I don't know if he was chugging gallons of water, but he was able to weigh in 204 at the combine. I've had scouts tell me they think he might play at like 185, 190. Like that's his. And they said, look at his wrists. He's got kind of pretty narrow wrists. And look at his neck. They're not certain that he's got the ability to gain the weight the way that Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson have, because those guys are built more thickly. So all that being said, he has a real knack for feeling his way through the pocket. He has managed in the college football's biggest and best conference to avoid major injury. And so he's the best quarterback in the draft if he can hold up. That's going to be the $20 million question. Obviously, the Panthers are confident that he can.
Yeah, and I like that pre-draft presser y'all did, where I believe Frank Wright was asked about was that I'm sorry, I think that was Scott Fitter was asked about their plan. I think he kind of went through they're confident. I think this is kind of when they started tipping their hand.
Yeah.
That,
if there was any doubt, Kevin, that day erased any doubt because they already had like the strength and nutrition plan ready to go.
Yeah, so hey, if they sign off on it, like I said, if we're gonna be so hyped and call this the Avengers coaching staff, then by God, we got to trust them on everything, even if our own natural concerns and fears teach us, not to do so. But yeah, I'm not worried about it because we seen, as big as Cam was, get hit. So, and then Bryce Young had two batted passes last year. So, and his offensive line was like 6'4" average at Alabama. Yeah, his size I'm definitely not worried about.
No, it's going to be, I mean, it's going to be an issue until it isn't. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be talked about. And I talked to in that same article you mentioned, I talked to Will Anderson, who obviously played with Bryce at Alabama. I talked to Jalen Carter, who played against Bryce Young. Both of them were like, look, this guy's a dog. He's tough, all this. He escapes. But then I also talked to the NFL Network, Daniel Jeremiah. This is all out when I was in Kansas City. And Jeremiah said that, he said, look, you kind of just have to accept, if you look around, like all these quarterbacks miss some time. And so if Bryce Young only ends up missing, 2 or 3 games a year, again, this Daniel Jeremiah's words, he said, I would sign up for 14 games of a great quarterback like Bryce Young than 17 games of a average quarterback. The problem would be if 3 games turns into like 8 to 10, obviously, but
yeah,
we're going to see. It's going to be fascinating to watch.
All right. All right, Joe, to wrap this up here for you, I know your time is definitely valuable here. So now that the draft is out the way, the undrafted free agents are signed. Do you foresee, 2-part question here. One, do you feel the Panthers could make a potential late free agent signings post-draft? Also, 2, do you think the Brian Burns extension is probably going to take place? Because Fitterer seemed extremely confident when he said Brian's going to be here. So I kind of felt like after the draft, it's more than likely to get done.
Yeah, so 2 things. I think Burns' extension will get done. It might be August. I don't know. The sooner they do it, the better, because you get too close to the start of the regular season, and then Burns' camp might just say, you know what, we're gonna wait, and we're gonna take our chances in free agency. So hopefully it doesn't get to that point. And then I keep thinking they're going to sign Leonard Floyd. I think a lot of teams are kind of in a stare down with him and the other, and I think he's a fit here. He was with the Rams where Evero has some experience, and I just think I don't know, makes too much sense. I do think they need another piece on the edge. So I wouldn't, I think that's. I mean, a lot of other teams were probably interested in him too. So who knows? But and then I was just going to mention too, like next week, the next kind of milepost on the NFL calendar is schedule release. We already know who they're playing, but it's the one I want to see. C.J. Stroud comes to Charlotte to face his old buddy since middle school, Bryce Young.
Oh yeah, that's going to be crazy. And with us playing the AFC South, we potentially could be seeing not only Stroud but also Levis and Richardson. We're going to be at Chicago, so that's going to be the quote DJ Moore Revenge Bloods and Guts Part 2 game per se, depending on who you're listening to. I can see the Panthers, even though we had a losing record last year, might get a couple of primetime games, with these matchups, because when we as you well know, it's definitely all about ratings and matchup and excitement. We played them Cowboys this year in Charlotte, so there's always a chance with them to get hyped. So I can see us possibly getting 2 or 3 games this year. Prior to getting on with you, Joe, I didn't know if you saw it. It was announced that the Panthers would play the Chiefs in Germany in 2024.
Oh, sweet. No, I missed that. So I better jump off and get to work, man.
yeah, that was part of the it was on Pro Football Network. The Chiefs actually go twice. They're gonna play the Bears in Germany in 2023, and then they're gonna play the Panthers in Germany in 2024. So I was like, oh wow, okay. So we did London in 2019. Hey, get your Oktoberfest, Joe. You might be having to go to Germany next year. Make sure your passport's updated.
Yeah, dude, I'm fired up for that. That they obviously have that marketing deal. They were a partner with Germany, so it was just a matter of when. That's going to be a lot of fun. I got to make sure I stay employed on this beat through October of 2024.
Oh yeah, you definitely will. And my final question here. So, what are you looking for as not only a fan but as a journalist with the Panthers? Getting ready to go into OTAs, mini camp, heading up in the training camp. Anything in particular that you looking forward to before we had that 6-week lull before training camp?
I mean, look, I could try to get deep in the weeds and start talking to you about who's going to line up at nose and who's going to line up at 4-eye, but right. It's all Bryce all the time, man.
All right, great. All right. Well, Joe, we definitely appreciate you taking time in your busy schedule. As always, it is a pleasure to talk football with you, man. If I get a chance to run back into you again in person, I definitely look forward to it. With my trucking career, I got to see how often I can get home during training camp this year. But
good luck in that transition, buddy. And I always appreciate you having me on. And I'm going to jump off, man, and I catch up on all the news on the Panthers.
All right, great. Well, listen, thank you so much, Joe, for joining us here at the 4-Man Rush. And we thank all of our fans as well. Again, catch Joe Person at The Athletic. Sign up. It's only $2, folks. It's not that much. And definitely follow all of his great articles as we shared here today. I'm Kevin Avery. Thank you guys so much, and we'll catch you next time. And we're clear.
Appreciate it, brother. I got